record on this computer. So it's a beautiful day out there and people are loving the weather, I'm sure. So we still have a few people here and we're going to talk about the magic of fiber today. But before we do that, we want to hear if there are any comments from any of you about any issues that you may have, how things are going, anything you care to share.
Hey, Eric.
Going once,
Hey,
going twice. Go ahead, Scott.
I was saying hello to Jamie as well. Thanks for doing the newsletter.
Yeah, the newsletter was really great. Thanks for doing that.
Thanks for all the countless hours that you all put into this. And I enjoyed doing the newsletter, although I had to hack around a bit to figure out a few things, but I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
go ahead, Doug.
You've mentioned I should eat greens 6 times a day.
Well,
Oh,
that's what
boy.
Dr. Esselstyn recommends. I haven't quite been able to make it 6 times a day, but
Oh,
if
I'm
you're-
disappointed. I want some advice how I could enjoy 3 snacks of greens.
well, we don't eat them 6 times a day, but we eat an awful lot for breakfast, as Scott can probably testify to. My wife chops up quite a lot of, a couple leaves of kale, a couple leaves of chard, a couple leaves of collard greens, and they're pretty big leaves. It's probably 3 to 4 cups, which
Three?
is
Well, that's for the whole day.
well, we eat breakfast. We stuff ourselves with whole grains, legumes, fruit, veggies, and then we generally don't eat maybe an apple snack in the afternoon and then a dinner. So we're eating 2 meals a day. I'm not eating 6 times a day. And so we've kind of crammed that into, breakfast, lunch, which is a brunch, and then a dinner as far as the greens are concerned. So we're only doing it a couple times a day. I don't know, if I had end stage heart disease or I had repeated bouts, I might be convinced to do it a bit more frequently, maybe 4 times. 6 seems, pretty obsessive compulsive about getting that in all those times. So
Maybe I'll move up to 4.
yeah, go to 4 and
Yeah.
call it good. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do it 6 times a day, but I think I'm doing over 6 times a day because I've been doing the Brooke Goldner thing, which is hyper nutrition in a bottle, basically a giant salad in a bottle that you make tasty with fruit and dates and other things. And but yeah, I'll add whatever kale and spinach and broccoli, throw it in my nice blender. So I got a professional grade blender and then just blend it up. And then you put like a half cup or so, a third cup to the third to half cup of flax. And I ran out of flax right now, so we've been using chia and hemp, using like a third cup of each of chia and hemp, and making this shake and then drinking it for breakfast and lunch and a bunch of snacks in between. Trying not to ruin my teeth by drinking it constantly, but it's going pretty well and it tastes pretty good. I've really gotten used to it. And man, it's hyper nutrition and it's really a way to really focus on getting your omega-3s more than your omega-6s. Actually, I put in this shake also some walnuts. I mean, really, I'm focusing on trying not to take much omega-6s, which is really mean cutting out a lot of nuts. And right now, while I'm trying this, cutting out nuts, any kind of processed food. So yeah, it's going well though.
Are you adding any sea vegetable in there, wakame or dulse or anything like that? Just out of curiosity.
No, I haven't done that, but at dinner time we'll make food, and oftentimes we'll snack on a little bit of the little seaweed snacks.
Okay, just
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, Doug. You can make yourself some smoothies, and if you don't drink it, if you drink half of it, does it get thickened up, or do you have to, kind of sip it at the time you make it? Are you using the blenders multiple times a day, or can you put it in the refrigerator?
No, I have one of the big from Costco. I've got one of those big cylinder cooler jugs, not jug, but
Is it a hydro flask?
yeah, hydro flask type things. Yeah, it is a hydro flask. And it keeps it cold, and I put some ice in it, but use also in the shake some ice. And I'll also add some a little bit of certainly some water so that it's not too thick. Sometimes we'll put in a little bit of plant milk too. So, and you gotta be careful. If you're trying to really cut down your omega-6s, you want to be careful of how much plant milk you're using too.
I keep mine overnight sometimes because I just haven't had time to drink it all. All I do is shake it up in the morning, and it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also to get the greens in, I don't know, it was Ocean Roberts or somebody I was listening to. They said that arugula is so good for gums and everything, and just take a handful of whenever you run through the house. So I eat a little bit of arugula a whole bunch of times a day, so I'm getting tons of greens in that way.
There you go, Doug. A few more, a little more arugula. It lasts a long time too, compared to like spinach. I think spoils a lot quicker than arugula. Any other thoughts from anyone? Go ahead, Jerry. Now that you have a voice again.
Born again. You know the lady that we listened to from Corvallis or Lebanon?
You mean from the medical school?
Yes.
That was Brooke Goldner.
No. Well, I'm sorry I don't remember her name, but I want to get her name too because I want to try and contact her. One thing she said was that you have to chew your greens.
Oh, that was Stephanie Polizzi. She's
Yeah.
from Oregon State University Extension. So
Mhm.
she's with the Extension Service in Coos Bay.
Oh, well, you showed us a video of hers one time, and it showed drawings of different famous people that were vegetarian.
Mhm.
I think one of them was Napoleon. You know, people names that we would recognize, geniuses that we would recognize. So I want to find out from her who they all were.
Okay.
I want her list. What was her name again? Stephanie
Polizzi, Polizzi. She's with Oregon State University Extension Service. If you can't find her, then chase after me and I'll try to dig up her information.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nancy. Fire away. Unmute yourself.
Yeah. So I was just wondering if anybody else grows some of their own food? Or am I the only one?
I grow some. We grew a lot of broccoli this year and a little lettuce, some peas, but not a whole lot. Looks like Doug and Lynn have.
I'm trying. There's a couple things I discovered. There's it's a shallot and it's the variety is called Davador, Davidor, and I grew those last year, and they're still good. I harvested them last fall, and they're still good and edible and everything. So if anybody wants to grow something that lasts all winter plus, I get it from Territorial, and I've just been really happy with it. Another thing I have found that lettuce is kind of iffy sometimes during the winter, because I like to grow. I grow all year round, and I found that curly endive it holds up to the cold better than lettuce, and it even lasts into the spring. So you can be eating on that all winter long. And arugula, I've had arugula go through sometimes, but sometimes it's gone out. And then Territorial also has a, let me see, I guess we need to get my video going. So, so I've got planted last fall, I think it's in September, these carrots. And they, I just harvested them like yesterday, maybe the day before. And I planted them September, and all winter long I look at them, I go, oh, I don't think I'm going to get anything out of these. They're just kind of nothing. But all of a sudden, I go look, and here's these nice big carrots, and they're so sweet. They're better tasting than the ones you get in the store, and you just keep them in the ground all winter. And I went through this winter with all the ice and everything, and like I say, they looked like I wasn't going to get anything. But hey, once spring came, they started growing and everything. So anyway, if anybody knows of any other things that do well for them, I would like to know, because like I say, I'll let you guys know when things work well for me, and I'd like any information from other people if what they've had good luck with.
Thanks to the passionate gardener. Go ahead, Lynn.
In my personal garden beds, sugar snap peas always go crazy. They're going crazy right now, and it's wonderful. And cucumbers. But I wanted to mention that I get a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture box from Youth Farm in Springfield. I just pick it up once a week, and it's close to me, and it's just wonderful, wonderful produce. And it's things that sometimes I never had used before and have to look up how to use, but it's been great. I really recommend it. I paid a bulk sum in the spring, and then for 25 or 26 weeks, I just get this wonderful box of veggies.
Nice. Thanks for sharing. Maybe you could put in the chat room where you get it from, if someone else is interested in joining. Okay, anybody else?
Okay, I'll mention with the carrots, they also had nice tops. And I went online and I found a recipe for carrot top pesto. So it's not just the root you can eat, but you can eat the tops with this carrot root pesto, and it turned out pretty good. So I like the 2-for-1 crops.
Okay, so now that we've shared a little gardening, I guess I'm going to share what I ate for dinner tonight. I need to figure out a way to do that. Full screen and share this, and it's not the prettiest of pictures, but let's see if I can find my mail here and see if it's on there. That looks like it is right here. Dinner, it says. Cancel. Yeah, I lost my email to the other place, the medical school, but here we go. Let's see, I guess I need to close this out. Okay, so let's start with what my wife made for dinner. Underneath this right here, this cloth, are like corn tortillas shells. They're not shells, they're soft corn. And so in the corn tortilla, we were to put some things. What are those things? She made a little coleslaw here. She made her own pico de gallo with mango added into it, which my mouth is watering as I'm talking to you about this. There was a touch of avocado over here. There was this hummus. There is this these little squares of tofu. And on the tofu, the way she makes these is she cuts them into cubes, and then in a bag, she puts some nutritional yeast and Nuchit. Nuchit is kind of a cashew kind of thing. She mixes those with a little coconut aminos, and then she air fries them. And man, it's a magnificent taste. And then she cut up some cauliflower and then used a fancy Mexican spice here that she got from Bend, Oregon or something. So we added that into it, and then she made some rice for eating these couple tacos a piece. So, and then for dessert, we had fruit. So I just wanted to share that with you. It was tasty. I'm feeling good about dinner. Lucky to have a person who actually makes my food for me. Not everybody has that opportunity, but I was very fortunate. So I just wanted to share with you, you can be creative and do some different kinds of things, get some different tastes, or it can just be plain and simple, like a potato, baked potato, crack it open, put in some beans or lentils, put a little hummus in there for a little added extra taste thrill. Add the salsa of your choice, add a couple handfuls of greens, and then the dessert is fruit. So, you know, you can make it easy or you can make it a little harder. She spent quite a bit of time in the kitchen doing that, making the own pico de gallo and all that stuff. She almost bought it in the store, and she says, well, I don't think so. Of course, she's got a little ulterior motive. She's been coaxing our granddaughter along, who's living with us and going to U of O, trying to, you know, show her the delights of the culinary delights of whole plant food. So as long as our granddaughter's living with us, I'm getting the benefits of a few extra fancy gourmet dinner delights. Okay. Anybody else have anything to say before I've got a little video show for you today. It's about 40 minutes. It's not going to take up the whole program. I've got a number of little video clips and stuff, and they've worked well in the past, so we'll do some today, and then we'll take questions in between. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to do questions. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start, and I'm going to share my
Where did Charlie go?
Yeah, it said I was muted, and I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, you stopped the recording and then it started back up again.
Yeah, that was so bizarre. I don't know why it stopped, but it did. Same thing happened the last time, or one other time. All right, let me try this again. Share the screen. Let's go to here. Let's go back to, before we get to the videos, I want to do a quick little, well, I don't want to do this. I want to go over to here. And I want to start with, we are what you eat, the microbiome. And Dr. Greger kind of explains this pretty well. So this is a good video to start.
Good bacteria, those that live in symbiosis with us, are nourished by fruits and veggies, grains and beans, whereas dysbiosis, bad bacteria that may contribute to disease, are fed by meat, junk food, and fast food, seafood, dairy, and eggs. Typical Western diets can decimate our good gut flora. We live with trillions of symbionts, good bacteria that live in symbiosis with us. We help them, they help us. And a month on a plant-based diet results in an increase of the good guys and a decrease in the bad, the so-called pathobionts, the disease-causing bugs. Given the disappearance of pathobionts from the intestine, one would expect to observe a reduction in intestinal inflammation. So they measured stool concentrations of lipocolin-2, which is a sensitive biomarker of intestinal inflammation, and within a month of eating healthy, it had declined significantly, suggesting that promotion of microbial homeostasis, or balance, by a strict vegetarian diet resulted in reduced intestinal inflammation. And this rebalancing may have played a role in the improved metabolic and immune system parameters. On an animal-based diet, you get growth of disease-associated species like Bilophila wadsworthia, associated with inflammatory bowel disease, and A. putridinus, found in abscesses and appendicitis, and a decrease in fiber-eating bacteria. Eat fiber, and the fiber-munching bacteria multiply, and we get more anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, short-chain fatty acids. Eat less fiber, and our fiber-eating bacteria starve away. They are what we eat. Eat a lot of phytates, and your gut flora get really good at breaking down phytates. We assumed this was just because we were naturally selecting for those populations of bacteria that could do that, but it turns out our diet can teach old bugs new tricks. There's one type of fiber in nori seaweed that our gut bacteria can't normally break down, but the bacteria out in the ocean that eat seaweed have an enzyme to do so. When it was discovered that the enzyme was present in the guts of Japanese people, it presented a mystery. Sure, sushi is eaten raw, and so some seaweed bacteria may have made it into their colons, but how could some marine bacteria thrive in the human gut? It didn't need to. It transferred the nori-eating enzyme to our own gut bacteria. Consequently, the consumption of food with associated environmental bacteria is the most likely mechanism that promoted the enzyme update into our own gut microbes, almost like a software update. We have the same hardware, the same gut bacteria, but they just updated their software to chew on something new. Hardware can change too, though. The reason this is called the way to a man's heart is through his gut microbiota is because they were talking about TMAO. Certain gut flora can take carnitine from the red meat we eat, or the choline concentrated in dairy and seafood and eggs, and convert it into a toxic compound, which may lead to an increase in our risk of heart attack, stroke, and death. This explains why those eating more plant-based diets have lower blood concentrations of the stuff, but they also produce less of the toxin even if you feed them a steak. You don't see the same conversion, suggesting an adaptive response of the gut microbiota in omnivores. They are what we feed them. It's like if you give people cyclamate, a synthetic artificial sweetener. Most of our bacteria don't know what to do with it. But if you feed it to people for 10 days and select for the few bacteria that were hip to the new synthetic chemical, eventually 3/4 of the cyclamate you eat is metabolized by the bacteria into another new compound called cyclohexylamine. But stop eating it, and those bacteria die back. Unfortunately, cyclohexylamine may be toxic, and so was banned by the FDA in 1969, whereas regular Kool-Aid, evidently, is completely safe. But if you just ate cyclamate once in a while, it wouldn't turn into cyclohexylamide, because you wouldn't have fed and fostered the gut flora specialized to do so. And the same with TMAO. Those that just eat red meat or eggs or seafood once in a while would presumably make very little of the toxin because they hadn't been cultivating the bacteria that produces it.
stop here for a moment and make sure we kind of do a quick summation of this issue with our microbiome. The microbiome has bacteria, trillions of bacteria, and we can choose what type of bacteria we populate our large intestine with. Essentially, there are two ways to populate. You can populate with animal products, or you can populate bacteria with what? With plants. And so the difference in those kind of bacteria make the difference in the chemicals that are produced that we are then fed back. Like if we're eating plants, those good bacteria feed us back chemicals. You know what those chemicals are? One of them is anti-inflammatory. It's called butyrate. Cuts down inflammation. That's why the more fiber that you eat, the more or the less inflammatory diet you'll be eating. Less inflammation with more fiber in your diet. Now, if you're eating meat, dairy, and eggs, the standard American diet fare, you're populating your microbiome. You're encouraging the growth of bacteria that are producing a chemical called trimethylamine, which gets converted to trimethylamine N-oxide. And that's an inflammatory particle which pushes cholesterol into your arteries, leading to plaque formation and buildup, and heart disease, stroke, death, those sorts of things. So food choice is tremendously important. We didn't really understand the microbiome. I never even heard the word before a few years ago. It's just something that hopefully as our population gets more educated, they'll pay more attention to the actual science of what healthy eating is. Okay, next I want to go back a little bit. And if someone has a question, you can kind of jump in and say, hey, I need to talk to you. But I want to share this little PowerPoint that I put together. It's like 12 slides. I don't know why I want to share a PowerPoint with you other than it had a few things that I thought you might find of interest. Like the microbiome is what you eat, and your microbiome will feed you foods and make you either healthy or unhealthy. So our foods have changed over the last 100 years. Here is, the sugar, the oils, the cheese. Let's see how they've changed. Most of you have seen this before, but I like to go over it again with you real briefly. Back in 1900, the average American used to eat 5 pounds of sugar per year. Now in the year 2010, it was about 77, and now in 2024, it's closer to 100 pounds of sugar per year per person. The oils have increased from 4 to 74, the cheese from 2 to 30 pounds per year. And it's no wonder that we have an overweight population with all this excess sugar, oil, and cheese, the fat in cheese. And I guess I don't want to make any bigger deal about it except the fiber issue. The average American is eating only 14 grams of fiber now, 14 or 15, where before we used to eat 60, 80, 100 grams of fiber a year. Okay, so that's an important slide, which I think everybody should be refreshed with. And can you get enough protein from just eating plants? The answer is yeah, you get very similar amounts of protein with 500 calories of plant food versus 500 calories of animal food. Now, animal food at 500 calories fits in the palm of your hand. You're not filled up, so you tend to eat a whole lot more calories. So you're getting a whole lot more protein in the day because you're kind of doing a lot more calories, which puts more weight on you also. But if you look at the rest of the nutrients on here, you'll see vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients are so much more in plant foods compared to animal foods. and there's no fiber in any animal food, just in plant food. And that brings us to the next slide. Someone's unmuted. If you could mute yourself, that would be great. Our nutrient deficiency is not protein. It is fiber, as I hope you get this message by the end of our class today. The microbiome, what you eat, determines the kind of bacteria populate your colon with. If you live in the desert, you have desert animals. They have a different environment. If you live in the ocean, you get kind of ocean animals. So again, what you feed the bacteria, meat, dairy, and eggs promote Bacteroides growth. Plants promote Prevotella. These are the good bacteria that you want. And TMAO is leading to atherosclerosis, our #1 killer, heart disease. So what is fiber? So fiber is the part of the plant that we really don't digest. We don't absorb the nutrients, the carbohydrate, which fiber is pretty much carbohydrate, but it's connected together so that it doesn't get absorbed in the small intestine. And it kind of, there's a couple different kinds of fiber. There's soluble fiber, which dissolves in water to form a gel, like oatmeal when it gets a bit mushy. What it does is that mushiness will hook up with excess glucose, cholesterol, excess estrogen, testosterone. So when it does that, you get lower cholesterol levels, lower blood sugar levels, you get lower estrogen levels that reduce the risk of breast cancer. The lower cholesterol levels reduce heart disease risk, and the lower glucose results in less diabetes. There is the insoluble fiber. It stays hard. It doesn't get soft, and it gets down to your large colon. And this is the fiber that's the food after it gets fermented. It's the food for your prebiotics, those good bacteria in your colon. So you want foods with insoluble fiber, but most of the plant foods have both a combination of soluble and insoluble. There's also a substance resistant starch, which also doesn't get absorbed by us. It's resistant to absorption, and that's like potatoes. So if you take potatoes and you put them in the refrigerator, you increase their resistant starch. So you're actually feeding your microbiome healthier if you increase the resistant starch. Usually potatoes is the one thing I can think of at this point. Different plant foods have different amounts of soluble, insoluble fiber and resistant starch. So eat a variety of them so you get a little bit of each. Bottom line, why is fiber so important? We feed the good bacteria, they feed us back. Butyrate we talked about, it's an anti-inflammatory chemical, which not only cuts down inflammation, but it also comes back, feeds our brain, and tells us you've had enough to eat. So you don't tend to overeat.
Looks like Charlie froze up.
Is it frozen up? I froze up? Scott? Let's see.
Can't hear you, Charlie.
You can't hear me now?
No, you're back, but you're locked up, but now I think you're back now.
Okay, thank you. So we feed the good bacteria, they feed us back. They give us butyrate, which turns off our desire. It feeds back to our brain, tells us we've had enough to eat so we can lose weight without having to keep gorging ourselves. I was always hungry before I turned to becoming whole food plant-based. Never could be satisfied, probably because I didn't have enough butyrate. The other chemical is serotonin that's produced. About 70–90% of the serotonin is produced in our microbiome. This is the hormone that is, or the chemical that is anti-anxiety, antidepressant. We talked about the wheelbarrow effect of the soluble fiber taking out the cholesterol, estrogen, and toxins. So you have a decreased rate of colon cancer because of the decreased toxin. So fiber is extremely important, and it is the deficiency in our diet. And I hope you get that message. Now, let's see if I can scan down. More reasons to eat fiber. normalizes bowel movement, so constipation goes away, helps maintain bowel health, less hemorrhoids and diverticular disease, lower cancer, colon cancer risk, lower cholesterol levels, lower blood sugar levels, helps maintain a healthy weight, and you live longer, less dying from cardiovascular disease and cancer. Healthy diet leads to a healthy planet. And the one thing you can do to not only improve your personal health, but also improve the world health is choose plant foods in place of animal. And that is the end of that little slideshow. Now we're going to go back to Neil Bernard, because I always like listening to him. So let's hear what he has to say about fiber.
The Cancer Project is a non-profit organization advancing the Food for Life series offers an entertaining cooking demonstration of simple and healthy recipes that can be recreated easily at home. Here is Dr. Neil Barnard, president of the Cancer Project.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. When researchers have looked for parts of the diet that can help us against cancer, prevent it or improve survival, or improve health overall, one of the things we've really keyed in on is fiber. What is fiber? Fiber means plant roughage. And by that I mean it's the part of plants that doesn't get digested right away. And it helps us in many ways. As one thing you know is it helps keep you regular. You hear people say that. All that means is it moves things along. But it doesn't just move food along, it moves carcinogens along. Let's say there was something not too healthy in the food I ate. Well, the quicker it leaves your body, the better off you are. Now, that can mean that if something was going to increase the likelihood of developing colon cancer because it's attacking the cells of your intestinal tract, it's gone. It's gone much faster. That's a good thing. Now, there's another thing, though. Fiber helps remove things that are circulating in your blood. How does that work? Your liver is filtering your bloodstream. Every minute of every day, blood is going through the liver, and the liver is looking for things that don't belong there. It's looking for hormones like estrogen or testosterone. You need some of those, but you don't need a huge excess, so your liver takes them out. It gets rid of cholesterol. It gets rid of medicines and things like that. And what it does is the liver filters the blood, finds a little excess estrogen, pulls it out of the blood, sends it down a little tube called the bile duct, and it ends up in the intestinal tract. And there, this little bit of estrogen goes down, attaches to some fiber that carries it out of the body. Very nice. So if you're thinking, well, a high amount of estrogen in my blood is linked to too much risk of breast cancer, a high fiber diet helps pull it away. One problem, a lot of people don't have much fiber in their diet. Let's say for breakfast I had bacon and eggs. How much fiber is there in that? Well, bacon and eggs aren't from plants. They don't have any plant roughage in it. Let's say for lunch I had yogurt and chicken breast. How much fiber is there? None, right? So the liver filters the blood. The little estrogen gets pulled out, goes down the bile duct, ends up in the intestinal tract looking for fiber, looking for fiber. Where is it? There isn't any. It reabsorbs back into the bloodstream. The estrogen goes around, ends up back at the liver. The liver says, what are you doing here? I thought I got rid of you. It pulls it out of the blood again, sends it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract looking for fiber. Where's my fiber? There isn't any. It's absorbed again. That estrogen will do this cycle over and over and over again. It's called enterohepatic circulation. Entero means intestinal tract. Hepatic means liver, like hepatitis. And this works not just for estrogen, but also cholesterol. Cholesterol will go around and around and around until you eat fiber. You hear about oat bran and oat cereals. They will reduce the amount of cholesterol in the blood. That's all they do. It's not rocket science. What they do is they grab that cholesterol that the liver has sent down, and they make sure it cannot get reabsorbed. That's a good thing. Same for testosterone. A man says, I don't want those testosterone excesses that are going to increase my risk of prostate cancer. Fiber is your friend. It puts the lid on it. It helps you to remove those excesses. Now let me walk you through an exercise. I want to help you to see how much fiber there is in the foods you eat. And inside of just a couple minutes, you are going to know how much fiber there is in just about everything in the store without reading the label. Will you do this with me? Okay. Let's take something like a banana. How much fiber is there in a banana? Now, you may not know right offhand, but give me a guess. Give me a guess. Is there 1 gram, 16,000 grams. How much fiber would you say there is in a banana? Anybody? 5, 8, 10, 2. Okay, very good. It's about 2.7 in an average banana. Okay, so not quite 3. How about an apple? Now, an apple's kind of like a banana, so it's not going to be 25. How much fiber would you guess is in an apple? 10, 3, what? About 3.7. So similar to a banana, a little bit more. How about cantaloupe? Now, here's a clue for you. If I take a cup of cantaloupe, it's a little bit more watery, so a little bit less fibrous. So if a banana is 2.7 and an apple's 3.7, what's cantaloupe? Okay, 1 to 2, right, good, about 1.3. So let's say an average fruit, you walk in the store, an average fruit is going to be about 3 grams per fruit. All right, let's take some vegetables. How about if I have a cup of broccoli? Give me a guess. Now, here's a clue. It's maybe broccoli's not quite as watery as a typical fruit, is it? A little more fibrous? So how much fiber would you say is maybe in a cup of broccoli? 6, 7, 8? Okay, about 4.6. So a cup of broccoli, about 4.6. How about carrots? Are they more like broccoli, or is a carrot more like cantaloupe? Well, it's more like broccoli. It's fibrous, right? So how much fiber? About 5? Very good. About 5.2 in a typical cup of carrots. How about iceberg lettuce? Well, it's not 0. It is a plant, okay? But you also know, you're thinking right, it's not huge. It's not like broccoli. So give me a number. 1, 1.5. Okay, perfect. 1.2. All right. So a typical cup of vegetables, we're going to say 4. All right, where am I? Fruit, 3. Vegetables, 4. Very easy, unless it's iceberg lettuce, when we're going to cut that down a little bit. Give me beans now. How about if I have a half cup serving of black beans? How many grams of fiber in that? Now, here's a clue. Beans are not really watery. They're pretty fibrous. So, half cup of black beans? 8, 6, 7. Very good, about 7.5. How about baked beans? Baked beans. 6, 7? Okay, about 6.4. Good. So, a typical half cup serving of beans, about 7. All right, where are we? Fruit, 3, vegetables, 4, beans, 7. Now let's go to our grain group. How about pumpernickel bread? Actually, a slice of pumpernickel has about 2 grams, about 2.1. It's less than you'd think. How about white bread? 0? Well, now, it's not going to be 0 because it is from a plant. Now, they've done their best to make sure there's no nutrition in there, but they did leave a little. So let's call it about a half a gram of fiber. Okay? So a typical bit of white bread, maybe up to a gram. A more whole grain bread, maybe about 2. But does that surprise you? Fruit is 3, vegetables are 4, beans are 7. The breads, which we think of as being high fiber, are lower. Okay, so our fiber champions, the bean group at about 7 for a half a cup, and then the vegetables at about 4, fruits at about 3, and if I have a slice of bread, if it's white, maybe a gram. If it's whole grain, about 2. Typical cereals, about 3. Okay? You walk in the store, and you can look on the left, you can look on the right, and you can estimate, even for a packaged food or a canned food, what's inside, and you're going to have a pretty good ballpark of whether it has fiber or not. Okay, extra credit. How much fiber is there in a pork chop?
0.
0? 0? We agree? Well, why?
0.5.
Why? Is it from a plant?
It's from an animal.
It's from an animal. Animals don't have plant roughage, so the answer is 0. How about a cup of milk? 0 because it's from an animal, not a plant. Wait, how about if it's skim milk? How about if it's organic skim milk? Still 0? You're with me? Okay. How about eggs? 0. How about eggplant? Okay, very good. So there's fiber in eggplant. Okay, so I always like things that are easy to remember. Animal products don't have fiber. Plant products do. So what? Does fiber really help? The answer is yes. Let's say I want to knock off a few extra pounds. One of the best things you can do is pump up the fiber intake in your diet. I'm going to give you a number. Every 14 grams of fiber that are part of your regular daily menu, every 14 grams of fiber cuts your calorie intake by about 10%. So let's say a typical person in the United States is eating maybe 12 grams of fiber per day. Add 14, I get 26. I'm going to feel fuller. And even though I think I'm eating the same amount, my calorie intake drops about 10%. So if I go up another 14 from 26 to where am I now? 40. My calorie intake drops again. I think I'm eating the same amount, but all that fiber fills me up. My calorie intake falls. Something's happening to my scale. I'm losing weight automatically without ever going hungry. Fiber is a good thing. It improves your digestion, it slims your waistline, it reduces cholesterol, and it'll reduce your cancer risk too. That's the power of healthy fiber. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to stop there and see if we have any questions from anybody in the group. Any comments? And I've got 1,000 videos, but the important thing is that you get a chance to get your questions answered and your concerns. You're hearing a number of these things sort of over and over about the benefits of fiber. Most of you have heard this a number of times already. Every time I talk about it, it reinforces my desire to continue eating what I'm eating. And I hope the same goes for you. Go ahead, Susan. Yeah, just unmute yourself.
Could you tell us again the science behind why it's not good to have like a fibrous, like have a
Metamucil or something?
Or psyllium or bran or something like a supplement, why that's not good?
Well, it's just part of a food, I know.
Instead of eating it, if fiber is so important, why not just have some psyllium?
Well, because you're not getting any nutrition out of it.
That's the question.
You're kind of answering it. Scott, do you want to chime in at all for the fun of it?
Yeah, it just isn't the same. It's it's the food containing the fiber that brings all the health benefits. Because when they do studies with fiber supplements, they don't have the same benefits. So fiber is important, but that's kind of the the reductionist way to look at it is it's just the fiber, because that's what like Dennis Burkitt thought, and when he did all the studies on patients in Uganda for over 30 years, he just thought, oh, it's the fiber. So then he's the reason that they started adding fiber to different breakfast cereals like Kellogg's and things like that back in the 60s and 70s. And so, but it didn't provide the same health benefits. And so it's the food that contains the fiber that's the benefit. So fiber is a part of that, but it's a marker of eating a whole plant food is how much fiber you're getting in your diet, not so much the fiber supplement.
Okay.
Yeah, it just seems like then it would be an imbalance because there would be not as much nutrition, but yeah.
Good thought.
So,
not as much nutrition.
Would you say that concentrating on fiber intake in your plant foods is more important than protein? I mean, because we were kind of having a discussion with a relative a couple months ago, and he was saying, well, AARP says that after 65, you should be getting 90 grams of protein. And Gary and I were trying to back up our argument about fiber was really, really important. And I guess we just didn't have the science ingested we didn't really know as much science to convince them or to give them much information. Even though I read that book, Fiber Fueled, which does, I guess, maybe give them a copy.
Yeah. So the authority for AARP when it comes to nutrition science, who's writing the articles for them?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Michael Greger has dedicated his life with 19 other volunteers. They're reviewing every article on nutrition around the world and the way they do it, looking at all the references and the other things. I have come to trust him with my life. And it took me a few years to come to that point, but I've yet to find anybody who's found anything wrong. Now, as far as AARP and their recommendation for 92 grams of protein a day, if Dr. McDougall were here to argue with them, he would explain to them they need much, much less protein, and that if they want to maintain their muscle mass when they're older, they need to be doing resistance exercises, weight bearing and resistance exercises. So, you know, you can trust whoever you want to trust.
Yeah.
You know, when your friends come up with this, it's difficult because they want to hear what and want to believe what they want to believe.
Yeah, well, that's good. Maybe I'll recommend that Dr. Greger's site.
Yeah, recommend Greger's site and
'Cause
recommend Bernard's site and recommend T. Colin Campbell's site, McDougall's site, and say, hey, you know, if you want to have confidence and trust someone, you need to do it from someone who's other than a journalist or someone who's writing for an article for a senior magazine. Just my thought.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks. Good idea.
You're welcome.
I
Nancy.
wanted to mention that Dr. Joel Furman saved my life literally about 15 years ago when I was like 260 some pounds and feeling like I was going to die soon. And his books, and he does the science behind it to the hilt. And he's someone that is a plant doctor, and I think you can totally trust him.
Okay. Nancy. Thanks.
Yeah.
Lynn.
I think I have osteoporosis. I had also for a while, and it was on the not the Protonics, but the Prevacid for a while. And anyway, so I was reading. You know, they always used to say that you need to get all this calcium and everything, and now they're not saying that anymore. And I just recently watched Dr. Greger's thing on osteoporosis, and he says, you know, the drugs and everything, you know, they don't really, it's kind of like with the cholesterol, it helps a little bit, but not really a cure-all because of side effects and so on. But the one thing he said you really need to do is work on your balance, because if you don't fall, you don't break a bone. And like Tai Chi and balance exercises and stuff probably are going to go a lot further in preventing bone breaks than anything else you do. So that's just what I got from his little video that he had on his site. So.
Very good. Okay. I think we're going to play the next video, and then we'll see if there are a few more questions. There's always questions. Yeah, Scott? Always questions.
That's good.
So microbiome, the inside story. Let's see what it has to say here. Michael Greger again.
Recently, it's become apparent that our DNA does not tell the whole story of our individuality, and other factors, environmental factors, play an important role in human health and disease, thanks to two revolutions in biology. First, there was epigenetics, where diet and lifestyle changes have been shown to turn genes on and off. And the second, our unfolding understanding of our microbiome, how changes in our gut flora appear to impact greatly on human biology. Until relatively recently, the colon was viewed as a retention tank for waste, and water absorption was its big biological function. The problem was it was hard to get in there, and we weren't able to grow most of the bugs in a lab. As many as 99% of all microbes fail to grow under standard laboratory conditions, and so how do you study something you can't study? But now we have fancy genetic techniques. It took 13 years to sequence the DNA of the first bacteria ever. These days, the same feat might only take 2 hours. And what we learned is that we can each be thought of as a superorganism, a kind of human microbe hybrid. We have trillions of bacteria living inside us. One commentator went as far as to say we are all bacterias, a provocative way of acknowledging that there are more bacterial cells and genes in our own body than there are human cells and genes, and most of those bacteria live in our gut. All animals and plants appear to establish these symbiotic relationships with microorganisms, and in us, our gut flora can be considered like a forgotten organ. Health-promoting effects of good bacteria include boosting our immune system, improving digestion and absorption. They make vitamins, inhibit the growth of potential pathogens, and keep us from feeling bloated. But should bad bacteria take roost, they can produce carcinogens, putrefy protein in our gut, produce toxins, mess up our bowel function, and cause infections. Researchers are still in the process of figuring out which bacteria are which. There are more than 1,000 different types of bacteria that take up residence in the human colon. Just to give you a sense of the complexity, let me show you a diagram from a typical study of gut flora. This happens to be the largest such study done on the elderly, showing the frailest older folks tend to harbor similar bugs, suggesting further it may be the lousy diet in nursing homes that's causing the shift, which may play a role in ill health as we grow older, as you can clearly see in Figure 4. I mean, duh. Thankfully, not all microbiome diagrams are that complex. Based on studying what comes out of twins, those that eat different habitual diets, and stools from around the world, it has become evident that diet has a dominant role on the bacteria in our colon, and the diet-driven changes in it occur within days to weeks. Change our diet, change our gut flora. The hope of impacting health through diet may be one of the oldest concepts in medicine. However, only in recent years has our understanding of human physiology grown to a point where we can begin to understand how individual dietary components affect specific illnesses through our gut bacteria. Milk fat on that piece of pizza, for example, may complex with bile and feed a bacteria that produces the rotten egg gas hydrogen sulfide and has experimentally been associated with colitis, inflammatory bowel disease. Fiber, on the other hand, feeds our good bacteria and decreases inflammation in the colon. Choline, found in eggs, seafood, and poultry, as well as carnitine in red meat, can be turned into trimethylamine oxide and contribute to heart disease and perhaps fatty liver disease. And excess iron may muck with our good bacteria and contribute to inflammation as well. The good news is that specific dietary interventions offer exciting potential for non-toxic, physiologic ways to alter gut microbiology and metabolism to benefit the natural course of many intestinal and systemic disorders.
Okay, so we're going to stop there and see what kind of questions you have. I see a couple hands up. I don't know whether they were up from before or still. So if they were up from before, maybe you'll lower them. And is there anybody who cares to comment on this? I'll kind of go to the gallery. I see Nancy, you have your hand up. But I think that may have been from the last time.
Well, I still have something else to say, because
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things when I travel, a lot of times meals are provided, or campouts and so on, and so there's hardly ever enough fiber in the diets that they serve, and so I do bring Metamucil on those trips. I also bring some chia seeds, but I always bring Metamucil just kind of to keep me going, because I'm just not getting enough fiber, and there's really not a whole lot of other ways to get it. So.
I think Gregor might recommend wheat germ for the spermidine in it and the fiber that you get, that you could sprinkle on things that you might eat. That's probably what I would choose to do.
I do bring chia seeds. Ground flaxseed tends to go bad pretty fast, so I don't bring that.
Okay. All right. Well, whatever works. Traveling can be, tough at times. We use Happy Cow to try to find places. It's not perfect. But like when we traveled to the Redwoods, we were able to find a couple restaurants that served some pretty healthy choices, actually. We negotiated with them about not using oil when they had their vegetable plates. They all had rice or potatoes and, veggies and some fruit desserts. It was pretty good.
Well, on catered trips, you don't always have a choice. Or
Yeah,
much
that's
of a choice.
very true. So one must be careful about how many days one spends on catered trips.
Yeah.
Because do you know how many days you can replace your whole microbiome in? How many days it takes? If you were totally plant-based and you decided to become totally meat-based, your whole flora could be flipped on its head and completely changed in a period of 4 days.
4 days. Well, I do eat I do eat the whole foods plant-based. It's just that a lot of times it's not very fiber intensive. So
Yep.
I try to stay away from all the meat and all that. So, and that's fairly easy. Most people are pretty good about that, but it's always for breakfast. They always like bacon and eggs. Then I have my oatmeal.
I have a
Okay,
question.
Marcia, go ahead.
I like to make split pea soup and I like to make it smooth. Does that stop the fiber?
As long as you're not separating it, if it's still part of the, like if you put it in a blender and you,
I have an immersion blender and I just,
yeah, you're not juicing the peas. You're not getting rid of the fiber. It's staying in there.
Okay.
So it's okay.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Doug.
We were at a ski resort in Alaska and our host took us to a fancy restaurant and they actually had a soup, a lentil soup they listed as gluten-free. It came out with a half a dozen fancy 1-inch probably croutons on it. And I asked the waiter to check to make sure, it wasn't wheat. Turned out it was wheat. I have celiac disease.
Wow. Yeah, you
can't always trust the menus.
You really need to be careful when you're eating other people's food. Just part of the reality of life, especially if you have celiac. Any other thoughts from anyone? Leslie. Unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to say that this has been the single biggest change for me since I went plant-based. I think when I think back to what I was eating before, I probably had hardly any fiber. And now I tracked it for a while. I'm eating between 40 and 50 grams a day. And it's really true that you're fuller and you don't want to eat a bunch of garbage. So I just wanted to say that I think it's the one thing that's changed the most for me.
Well, thanks for sharing that. It's more helpful for your peers to hear from you than it is from us many times. Anybody else care to chime in? Doug?
I volunteer my wife if you want a testimonial on whole food plant-based regarding inflammation.
All right, my story is from a couple of years ago, and I had surgery, carpal tunnel surgery on both hands, and I had extreme pain in my hands. And after the surgery, I had extensive inflammation. And for 3 years, I had to stop cycling. I'm a cyclist, and I had to stop cycling because I couldn't squeeze the brakes on my bike to stop. And I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't do anything because my hands were so sore and had such problems with it. And I went on to a whole food plant-based diet, and within 2 weeks, I could make a fist. I could use my hands, and my hands have been totally functional ever since then.
How long ago was this?
3 years ago?
Wow. That's a wonderful story.
Yeah, it was miraculous to me that it occurred so quickly. That it was, and I was taking 7 pills a day. So I had 2 different two different prescriptions, but I was taking a total of 7 pills a day to help decrease inflammation. And the doctor was trying to get me to go on methotrexate, and I did not want to go on methotrexate because of all of the side effects. And then, as I say, I went into the plant-based diet and I got rid of my pills. And I can use my hands.
Love to hear that. Anybody else? Thanks, Doug, for encouraging Evie to share her story. Okay, so far so good. Let's get on to one more video, just because we have time, and then we'll share some more stories perhaps, bit by bit. So what you eat matters is the note that I put on the next video. What's your gut microbiome? What's your gut microbiome? Enterotype. Okay, this is kind of an interesting one.
The human gut has a diverse collection of microorganisms making up some 1,000 species, with each individual presenting with their own unique collection. But it wasn't known whether this variation is on a continuum or if people cluster into specific classifiable types, until this famous study analyzed the gut flora of people across multiple countries and continents and identified 3 so-called enterotypes. There were people who had lots of Bacteroides in their gut, people who had a predominance of Prevotella species, and people whose stool instead grew out of a lot of Ruminococcus species. Pretty amazing that with so many hundreds of types of bacteria that people would settle into just one of 3 categories. But they figure our guts are like ecosystems. Just like there's lots of different species of animals on the planet, they aren't randomly distributed. I mean, you don't find dolphins in the desert. In the desert, you find desert species. In the jungle, you find jungle species, because each ecosystem has different selective pressures, like rainfall or temperature. Well, this early research suggests that there are 3 types of colon ecosystems. You can split humanity up into 3 types. People whose guts grow out lots of Bacteroides-type bacteria, those whose guts are better homes for Prevotella group bacteria, and those that foster the growth of Ruminococcus. And if you think it's amazing they were able to boil it down to fit everyone into just one of 3 groups, subsequent research on a much larger sample of people was able to fold Ruminococcus into Bacteroides. So now everyone fits into just one of 2 groups. So now we know, when it comes to gut flora, there are just 2 types of people in the world. Those that grow up mostly Bacteroides, and those that overwhelmingly are home to Prevotella species. The question is why? It didn't seem to matter where you lived, male or female, how old or skinny you are. What matters is what you eat. This is what's called a heat map. Each column is a different grouping of bacteria, and each row is a food component. Red is like hot, meaning a close correlation between the presence of this particular bacteria and lots of that particular nutrient in the diet. Blue is like cold, meaning you're way off. A reverse correlation, meaning lots of that nutrient is correlated with very low levels of that bacteria in our gut. They looked at over 100 different food components, and a theme started to arise. This column is Bacteroides, and this column is Prevotella. Note how they're kind of opposites. When it comes to things like animal fat, cholesterol, animal protein, Bacteroides is red and Prevotella is blue. And when it comes to plant components like carbohydrates, Prevotella is red and Bacteroides is blue. Here's a simplified version, clearly showing the components found more in animal foods like protein and fat are associated with Bacteroides, with the Bacteroides enterotype, and those found almost exclusively in plant foods are associated with Prevotella. So no surprise African Americans fell into the Bacteroides enterotype, where most of the native Africans were Prevotella. The reason this may matter is that Bacteroides species are generally associated with increased risk of colon cancer, our second leading cause of cancer death, yet almost unheard of among native Africans. The differences in our gut flora may help explain why Americans appear to have more than 50 times the rate of colon cancer.
So when your friend was saying that they want you to have more protein instead of fiber, they want you to have more cancer because you are getting less fiber. You know, if you look at the statistics, you really come to the conclusion that you want to populate your colon with Prevotella type bacteria. You want less cancer, you want less inflammation. You don't worry about protein, because the studies show that if you're eating enough calories for the day where you're not hungry, you're getting enough protein. Bottom line. We keep answering that question over and over again. Maybe it could be fun one of these days to keep answering it. Maybe someone will be convinced, actually. Most of us in this room have been convinced. Any other questions or any other thoughts? We have another 14 minutes, so I can play a video.
I've got a quick question.
Go ahead, Marcia, and then Nancy. Go ahead.
I was at the National Health Association meeting, and one of the doctors there said, you should eat a lot of diversity in your plants so you get that. And I forget what he said, but it was just eat a lot of diversity of plants.
So when you eat a lot of diversity of plants, you get a wide variety of different kinds of bacteria in your colon, good bacteria. And that's fiber fueled, makes a big point of this. You want to be eating 30 to 40 different kinds of food a week so that you're encouraging the growth of a multitude of healthy, good bacteria that are eating fiber.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Nancy. Maybe that was left over.
Unmute. Okay. If you're eating mostly ultra processed foods, because I've read where 60 to 80% of the average American diet is ultra processed food. Are you still going to get enough protein with the ultra processed food, or would you have to have some other kind of protein? Just curious.
I don't know the answer to that, actually. I would say that I wouldn't encourage anyone to be eating ultra processed foods just because that's what the society offers. I mean, the classes here, we're talking about what are healthy food choices. So, I surely wouldn't reassure someone and tell them, okay, eat all the ultra processed foods you want because you're getting enough protein. That surely wouldn't be a healthy choice. So I don't know what the benefit would be if we knew they were.
I'm just saying, the average man on the street that doesn't know anything and just thinks they need to eat a lot of protein. So I was just wondering if the ultra processed foods would, because I know the beans, a lot of the fibrous foods also have quite a bit of protein. So then I can see you're getting enough protein. But if you're eating junk food all the time, maybe you do need some protein supplements. I don't know. Just curious.
I think most people the studies show most people in the United States eating the standard American diet are getting more than the amount of protein. So I guess the answer to your question is ultra processed foods probably have more than the amount, which leads to kidney disease in the long run.
Yeah, it's going to depend on what ultra processed food it is. You'd have to look at the label of each of the foods, and a lot of times, a lot of processed foods they add whey protein, so that's dairy protein, and so that's going to add a lot of grams of protein, but it's not going to be good for your health, any of those foods. And so it's just, yeah, like Charlie said, I think, given that 60 to 80% of the standard American diet is they're processed or ultra processed food, yet when they do evaluations of how many grams of protein the average American is getting, they're getting almost between 150 to 200% more protein than they actually need. So again, it's not a nutritive concern. It's it's the fibers of the issue.
All right, inflammation, inflammatory bowel diseases. If you know of anybody who has ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease or inflammatory bowel problems of any sort, you may want to see this next video or share it with them, because it kind of brings home a point that prebiotics tending our inner garden. Let's take a listen to what Gregor has to say here. Last video will make this.
It's also the topic next week is gastrointestinal health, so good segue.
And what is it next week?
Gastrointestinal health.
All right, well, this is a lead-in into it, I guess.
You haven't shared your screen yet. We don't hear any video yet. If
you don't hear any video?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So I must not have shared, right?
Yeah, no, we still see you.
Okay, I must. I guess it's the old brain. Here's the share. You can see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back and dang. Let's pull this down. Go back here. Way complicated life with so many places to be able to click. Oops, right there, number 6. And coming right here, tending our inner garden. Here we go. All right.
The total surface area of our gut is maybe 3,000 square feet, counting all the little folds, larger than a tennis court. Yet only a single layer of cells separates our inner core from the outer chaos. The primary fuel that keeps this critical cell layer alive is a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate, which our good bacteria make from the fiber we eat. We feed the good bacteria in our gut, and they feed us right back. They take the prebiotics we eat like fiber, and in return provide the vital fuel source that feeds the cells that line our colon, a prototypical example of the kind of symbiosis between us and our gut flora. How important are these compounds, our good bacteria derived from fiber? There's a condition known as diversion colitis that frequently develops in segments of the colon or rectum after surgical diversion of the fecal stream, meaning if you skip a segment of the bowel, like with an ileostomy, so that food no longer passes through that section, it becomes inflamed and can start bleeding, breaking down, closing off. How frequently does this happen? Up to 100% of the time. But the inflammation uniformly disappears after you reattach it to the fecal flow. We didn't know what caused it, maybe some kind of bacterial overgrowth or bad bacteria, or Was it a nutritional deficiency of the lining of the colon due to the absence of the fiber needed to create the short-chain fatty acids? We didn't know until this study, where they cured the inflammation by bathing the lining in what it so desperately needed. Severe inflammation gone in just a few weeks. We feed the good bacteria in our gut, and they feed us right back. It makes sense that we have good bacteria in our gut that feed us, tries to keep us healthy. They got a pretty good thing going, right? It's warm and moist, and food just keeps magically coming down the pipe. But if we die, they lose out on all that. If we die, they die. So it's in their best evolutionary interest, right, to keep our colon happy. But there are bad bugs too, like cholera that cause diarrhea. They have a different strategy. The sicker they can make us, the more explosive the diarrhea, the better their chances of spreading to other people, into other colons. They don't care if we die because they don't intend on going down with the ship. So how does the body keep the good bacteria around while getting rid of the bad? Think about it. We have literally trillions of bacteria in our gut. And so our immune system must constantly maintain a balance between tolerance to good bacteria while attacking bad bacteria. If we mess up this fine balance and start attacking harmless bacteria, it could lead to inflammatory bowel disease, where we're in constant red alert attack mode. The mechanisms by which the immune system maintains this critical balance remained largely undefined until now. If you think about it, there's got to be a way for our good bacteria to signal to our immune system that they're the good guys, and that signal is butyrate. Butyrate suppresses the inflammatory reaction, tells our immune system to stand down. So butyrate may behave as a microbial signal to inform our immune system that the relative levels of good bacteria are within the desired range. Right? Butyrate calms the immune system down, saying in effect, all's well, you got the good guys on board, ultimately rendering the intestinal immune system hypo-responsive, meaning kind of accommodating to the beneficial bacteria. But in the absence of the calming effect of butyrate, our immune system is back in full force, attacking the bacteria within our gut, because they're obviously not the right ones, since butyrate levels are so low. So we evolved to have butyrate suppress our immune reaction. So should our good bacteria ever get wiped out and bad bacteria take over, our immune system would be able to sense this and go on a rampage, and destroy the invaders and continue rampaging until there are only good bacteria, creating butyrate to put the immune system back to sleep. OK, here's the critical piece. Here's why this all matters. What if we don't eat enough fiber? Remember, our good bacteria use fiber to create butyrate. So if we don't eat enough fiber, then we can't make enough butyrate. We could have lots of good bacteria, but if we don't feed them fiber, they can't make butyrate. Sensing such low levels of butyrate, our body mistakenly thinks our gut must be filled with bad bacteria and reacts accordingly. Our body can mistake low fiber intake for having a population of bad bacteria in our gut. Our body doesn't know about processed food. It evolved over millions of years, getting massive fiber intake. Even during the Paleolithic period, 100 grams of fiber a day. So on fiber-deficient Western diets, eating our Spam on Wonder Bread, right, when our body detects low butyrate levels in the gut, it doesn't think low fiber. As far as our body's concerned, there's no such thing as low fiber. It thinks bad bacteria. Because for millions of years, low butyrate means bad bacteria. So that's the signal for our body to go on the inflammatory offensive. So that's one reason why fiber can be so anti-inflammatory. One of the reasons fiber intake is critical for optimal health. Not fiber supplements, but whole plant foods. Fiber supplementation with something like Metamucil may not replicate the results seen with a diet naturally high in fiber.
That's the last word from Dr. Greger. So, any thoughts here before we continue on next week? Hope that you've learned a little bit about fiber and the microbiome, and It's a very interesting, fascinating topic. This last video I've heard a number of times, but it made more sense to me tonight than it ever has. So it's taken me a few times to kind of listen to this, to kind of understand the importance. I used to think of fiber and butyrate, the butyrate turning off our desire to eat, and that if you don't get enough fiber, you're going to always be hungry. I always heard about butyrate being anti-inflammatory, but I didn't really quite get the connection between the bad bacteria and the good bacteria. Now, I imagine that's a theory, but it sure sounds good to me. And it was kind of fun listening to it tonight. You all know that the in-person classes are starting July, 26th at 7 to 8:30 at the Grange in the Irving Grange on Irvington. You all aware of that? If you're
I'll be
not,
sending out I'll be sending out a special email on 4th of July announcing that. It's already in the class newsletter every Sunday, but figured I'd send out a separate email just to remind people, and also to have maybe some of you in this class can, even if you aren't able to come, but try to get somebody, friend, family member, coworker, anyone that might want to be interested in going. You can print out a few of the class flyers and either send them electronically or print a few out and share them with some people, and so we're trying to get kind of a broaden our recruitment of people to come and spread the message. So look for that on Thursday.
we have about 20 people who have signed up online so far. And we've got plenty of space. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, this was fun for me tonight. Hope it was fun for you at times, and thank you for your questions and your input and your stories. It really does us all good to kind of hear that, I think. Scott, thank you for everything.
Yeah.
And next week, you said again, was GI.
Yep, gastrointestinal health. So it's a great one to come on the heels of this one.
Good deal. All right, everyone. It's been an hour and a half plus a couple minutes, and wish you a good week and a happy 4th of July.
And stay cool out there. It's gonna be hot this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good information. Thanks.
you're welcome. Take care, everyone.